Somewhere around midday, a large black motorcar came creeping onto our landing field. All of us became suddenly very alert. The car crept slowly over the field as though searching for something. Then it turned and headed for the olive grove below us, where our planes were parked. It pulled up beside the olive grove. The back door opened and out stepped a formidable figure in RAF uniform. "My God, it's the Air Commodore," Dowding said. And it was.
"Where the hell is everybody?"
the Air Commodore shouted.
"We're up here, sir,"
we called back. He looked up and saw us.
"Come down at once,"
he shouted. We clambered down and straggled up to him. He reached into the car and brought out a thick parcel wrapped in white paper and sealed with red sealing wax. The parcel was about the size of an average Bible, but it was floppy and bent slightly as he held it in his hands.
"This package," he said, "must be delivered back to Elevsis at once. It is of vital importance. It must not be lost, and it must not fall into enemy hands. I want a volunteer to fly there with it immediately."
Nobody leapt forward. Finally, I said, "I'll take it. I am a compulsive volunteer. I'll say yes to anything."
"Good man," said the Air Commodore. "When you land, there'll be somebody waiting for you. His name is Carter. Ask him his name before you give him the package. Is that clear? The rest of you will be waiting in your cockpits, and as soon as you see him overhead, you are to taxi out and take off. You," he said, pointing at me, "will join up with them, and all of you will fly onto Argos."
I went over to my Hurricane and got in and did up my straps. I put the mysterious package on my lap. On the floor of the cockpit under my legs, I had the paper bag with my belongings, as well as my logbook. My camera, I remembered clearly, was hanging by its strap from my neck. I taxied out and took off. I flew very low and fast, and in 8 minutes I had reached Elevsis airfield. I circled the field once, looking for Germans or their planes. The place seemed totally deserted. Just as I came to the end of my landing, I heard the air raid sirens wailing somewhere in the distance. I jumped out of my plane with the precious package and lay down in the ditch that surrounded the field. I got back into my Hurricane and taxied up to the operations hub. The small buildings were splattered with bullet marks, and the glass in all the windows was shattered. Several of the huts were smouldering. I got out of my plane and walked towards the wreckage of huts. There was not a soul in sight. The entire aerodrome was deserted. In the distance, I could hear the Stukas diving onto the shipping in Piraeus Harbour, and I could hear the bombs exploding. "Is there anybody here?" I called out. I felt very lonely. It was like being the only man on the moon. I stood between the ops hut and another small wooden hut alongside. I held the famous package tightly in my right hand. "Hello?" I called out. "Is there anybody here?" Again, the silence. Then a figure shimmered into sight beside one of the huts. He was a small, middle-aged man wearing a pale grey suit, and he had a trilby on his head. "What is your name?" I asked him. "Carter," he said. "Take it," I said. "By the way, what's in it?" "Thank you for coming," he said, smiling slightly. "Will you be all right?" I said to him. I had to raise my voice to make it heard over the crash of bombs falling on Piraeus Harbour. He reached out and shook my hand. "Please leave at once," he said.
Your machine is rather conspicuous out there.
I returned to the Hurricane and started the engine. From my cockpit, I glanced back to where Mr. Carter had been standing. I wanted to wave him goodbye, but he had disappeared. I opened the throttle and took off straight from where I was parked. I flew back fast and low to the field at Megara, where the other 6 were waiting for me on the ground with their engines running. When they saw me overhead, they took off one by one and we all joined up in loose formation and flew on to look for this place that was called Argos. The Air Commodore had said it was a landing strip. It was, in fact, the narrowest, bumpiest, shortest little strip of grass any of us had ever been asked to land a plane upon. But we had to get down, so down we went. It was now about noon. The Argos landing strip was surrounded by those ever-present olive trees, and in among the trees we could see that a whole lot of tents had been put up. Nothing stands out from the air more than a bunch of tents, even when they are tucked away among the olive trees. Oh, brother, I thought. How long will it take them to find us here? A few hours at the most. No one should have put up any tents. The ground crews should have slept under the trees, so should we. Our squadron leader had his own tent, and we found him sitting in it beside a trestle table. "Here we are," we said. "Good," he said. "You'll be doing a patrol over the fleet this evening." We stood there looking at the squadron leader as he sat behind his trestle table that had no papers on it. There is something wrong about this, I told myself. There is no way in the world the Germans are going to allow us to operate our 7 aircraft from this place. "How long will it take them to find us here, sir?" I remember asking. The squadron leader passed a hand over his eyes, then rubbed his eye sockets with his knuckles. "Who knows?" he said. "They'll wipe us out by tomorrow," I said, greatly daring. "We can't run away and leave the army with no air cover," the squadron leader said. "We must do our best." We all trooped out of the tent, feeling not very happy about anything.